Welcome to the Master Your Magnetism podcast, where I help you shift your vibe and radiate self love so you can create the life and relationship you've always wanted. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to be answering a question that was sent in from one of my listeners. And I invited my husband, Tom, on to talk about this topic with me today because I thought it was really important to get a man's perspective on this topic. So, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, I'll go ahead and play the question now so everyone can hear it.
Hi, Helena. Thank you for answering my question. I am currently with a guy who we've known each other since the beginning of July. We jumped right into a relationship where he was basically living with me, and we were having sex very early in the relationship. And for about 3 or so weeks, we were extremely happy together. And then my sister came into town for a week, and he went back to stay with his sister, who he had been living with before he met me. But I found out later that he had only been divorced for about 3 months, and he was still very hurt and dealing with all that too. And early on, he told me that he loved me, but then he changed that and said he doesn't love me and that he can't make a commitment. And he encouraged me to start dating other men, which I did recently. But then when I did that, he got very jealous very quickly, and not nasty jealous, but just he sent me a voicemail and said that I have a strange way of showing how much I miss someone. So anyway, I am dating other guys. I feel I'm so conflicted, and I really love this man, and I want to be with him. But I'm having a hard time leaning back, and I just can't seem to get him out of my head. And we are spending time together like every other weekend, but he won't make a commitment. So I probably know what you're going to say, but my question is, what do I do? I just don't. I don't know what direction to go with this. I don't want to end the relationship, but I still want a life with him. So I'm just not sure what direction to go in. That's my question to you. So thank you so much.
So right off the bat, there were a few things that stood out to us when we first heard this question. The first was that you say this man has been divorced for 3 months. Now, typically men who are recently separated or divorced definitely are not ready to jump into something serious, at least not until some time has gone by and they've healed from that situation. It doesn't sound like this man has done any of that type of healing at all. So what may have happened was you came in and filled this void that was there for him. Maybe he was in a bad marriage and then you came along and you had this amazing time together. And so that's what drove him to say, I love you so quickly, and then take it back after the reality of the situation hit him. I hear from a lot of women in this situation, and typically when they get involved with a man who's newly single, especially recently divorced, he sort of leaps before he looks. He overpromises in a sense and underdelivers. Often in situations like this, there are a lot of neurotransmitters involved that are associated with the newness of the situation, like dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine. Then after a couple weeks or months, when all of that wears away, the reality of the situation hits him, like I mentioned, or this can happen for women as well. And that's when they pull back. But typically it's too late because you're already invested and you said you've fallen in love with this man. And that's when we lean forward and try and keep it going, even when that's not in our best interest. He also flat out told you that he doesn't love you and can't make a commitment. So it's really important to listen to a man and believe him when he tells you these things. So those were my initial thoughts. I have a little more to say on this, but Tom, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I think you said that really well. I think we've talked about very similar scenarios in the past where a person gets attached and then is holding out hope that there would actually be a scenario where a man would put in both feet where he was previously on the fence. And I think in general, that's a fantasy. And I think that the reluctance to realize that is because of that attachment, that chemistry that you feel at the beginning of a relationship, that if it were another person, you would probably be more apt to let go of more quickly or realize the overbearing red flags in that situation. I think that it's important to realize that this kind of a transformative progression is never a reality. Nobody is ever in a situation where they are getting to know somebody and evaluating the situation and trying to determine whether they're ready for a commitment with that person, and then suddenly just determine one day that, all right, I'm ready for this, I have both feet in, let's go, I'm fully committed. That just doesn't happen.
So it sounds like what you're saying is it doesn't go from a situation like this where they're only seeing each other a couple times a month and he's flat out told her that he can't make a commitment, to all of a sudden a light bulb goes off in his head a few months later and he just decides all of a sudden that he's ready to put both feet in.
Right.
I think I've heard you say before that interest, that kind of interest, wanes over time. So if a man isn't building momentum and escalating his efforts from the beginning, it typically doesn't turn into a situation where he decides to put both feet in and picks up the momentum after months and months of it being stagnant, right?
Right, right. And you brought up a really good point when we were discussing this question before. What if they part ways, and in this case, maybe this man who's recently divorced is given time to recover from his divorce and move on, and she goes off and kind of lives her independent life and dates other people, and over the course of a year or two or something, they are then in a place where they, when reconnected, are ready for a committed relationship. And I think that's a really excellent point, because I think that's exactly the type of thing that people keep in the back of their mind that holds them in this sort of a situation, because they are then constantly acting with this mindset that they will eventually find their way back to this person. And that means that they haven't actually ever moved on, because they have this particular person that they're attached to, that they remain attached to all the while. And I think that for all intents and purposes, while that could happen, while there could be a scenario like that where two people part ways and then reconnect at some point when they are ready for a relationship, it's really totally irrelevant to the situation at hand. When you're trying to assess this situation and trying to determine what you should do, you should totally disregard that as even a remote possibility, because it has no bearing on this current situation and will only serve to further inhibit you from moving on with your life, I think.
It's such a great point. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I hear from a lot of women who do exactly that. They sort of go through the motions of moving on, but really they're just holding out hope for this one guy who was never truly available in the first place, or who was never going to be into her for the long haul. And then what happens is they try and date other men, but no guy compares to the chemistry and attraction that they felt for this
Right.
first man, because they haven't truly moved on. And I know this can be really difficult. So we're saying this with all of the love and gentleness in the world. We've all been in situations where we've stayed in relationships or situationships way longer than we should have. So hopefully this will be helpful for everybody listening. Speaking of dating other people, she also mentioned that he actually encouraged her to date other men. And it is my opinion that the right man for you, and a man who's truly available and ready for a real relationship, is just not going to do that. So when I heard that, that was a major red flag, but I'd really like to hear a man's perspective on that.
Right. I think if a man is truly interested and is available for any kind of commitment, even if not immediately in the moment, he's not going to suggest that you date other men. That's something that he's either genuinely suggesting because he's trying to basically get you to move on and is trying to sort of let you down softly, or maybe some sort of tactic or manipulative effect. Then obviously that is not something that you want to be a part of either.
Yeah, it's another issue in and of itself, also a red flag, right? So those were our initial thoughts, and we know that we're probably not telling you anything something that you already don't know, right?
Right.
But you asked what to do. And for everyone in a situation like this, I hear from so many women who say things like, he won't commit to me, but he also won't let me go. And then they feel stuck in this situation and they don't want to let him go either. And so they just sort of wait around endlessly. Then there's no reason for this guy to ever make a decision or do anything different. And more importantly, you're in this situation where you're never going to truly get what you want and deserve. So, in terms of what to do, the first thing that's coming to me is if you are okay with this situation exactly as it is right now, and you're not holding out hope for anything ever changing, then you can just have fun with it and enjoy yourself. But the way this question was worded, and I think you even said that you are hoping for a life together, that's probably not the case. So we wanted to give you a whole new perspective on this that will hopefully empower you to make decisions that will serve you better than staying stuck in a situation like this.
Yeah. I think that you had a really good suggestion recently for somebody who's close to us that you had helped in a similar scenario where she was attached to somebody, and you had a suggestion for how to reframe her mindset around it. Because I think that in many of these situations, what is very difficult, as we well know, is that it seems confusing. It seems
Yeah.
like there's this conflict and you're not sure what decision to make. And I think that in reality, it's actually very clear, right?
Absolutely. It's crystal clear. Hopefully, the way we talked about some of these points at the beginning of this episode made it super clear in your mind that this is not a situation that's going to lead to anything more serious, not the way it is right now. So instead of saying that you feel confused, and I don't believe you said this in your question, but I hear from women all the time who say, I'm so confused. This is just so confusing. And this is what this person that came to me a few weeks ago, someone who's close to us, was saying. She was dating this man who she knew was not the right man for her. He was waving red flags right from the beginning. She knew for sure that this was not her future husband, but she wasn't able to let him go. She got comfortable in this situation, and the longer it went on, the more invested she got, and she just wasn't able to break free from it, even though she knew that this wasn't going anywhere. So what I had her do is, rather than bemoaning the fact that this is so confusing and I don't know what to do and I can't figure this out, I had her just simply own the fact that she was wasting her time and basically make peace with that. I always say that you have to make peace with where you are in order to move beyond that, or in order to get anywhere else, in order to move forward to where you want to be. So if we've established that you're wasting your time here, and more importantly, if you've owned the fact that this is just a temporary situation right now, it's not heading anywhere, therefore you're wasting your time, and that's okay. You don't want to beat yourself up for that. You want to make peace with that and basically say, I'm wasting my time here, and that's okay. Something in me is not ready to move forward yet. Then what happened with this woman who I helped out in a similar situation a few weeks ago was her perception cleared up and her intuition kicked in. And once she made peace with where she was and the reality of the situation, she could really see this man and relationship for what it really was, because she stopped telling herself that she was so confused and she didn't know what to do. So what happened was she saw this man a few times after we spoke, and she could really feel into the situation and see that she wasn't being treated in a way that was in alignment with what she truly wanted and deserved for herself. And so she was able to really get clear and say, okay, if I'm just wasting my time here, I at least want to be treated really well and have an amazing time and have just the time of my life. And that wasn't what was happening. So it made it really easy for her to move on. So this might sound a little strange, owning the fact that you're just wasting your time and making peace with that. But what will happen is you'll really start to connect with your intuition and your heart's desires, and you'll be able to feel whether or not this man and potential relationship is in alignment with what you truly want and deserve. You probably want someone who wants to be with you as much as you want to be with him. That's what we all want, right? And clearly, this is not the case here. So, what might be helpful is giving yourself a timeline. This woman that I helped in a similar situation a few weeks ago said, I think I might be willing to waste my own time through the end of the year. And she kind of just got much more lighthearted around it and said, I'll waste my time for a few more months. And of course, after a few weeks of spending time with him and realizing what the situation was, she was able to break things off and move forward with her life. But those are my initial thoughts on just owning the fact that you're wasting time here and there's something about the situation or something about you that's not able to let this go right now. And that's okay. You're not going to beat yourself up over it. What are your thoughts on that?
I like what you said about making peace with where you are. I think that's the first thing that you have to do to basically set the path forward. And I think that, like you said, if you are able to own the situation that you're currently in without any assumptions about what might happen in the future, then you can be a lot more relaxed. And I think that allows your intuition to kick in. And if you're at peace with wasting your time, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Many people waste tons of time every day doing
Mm.
things that are non-value added to their lives. There's nothing wrong with that if it's not harming you. And if you're okay with that situation, then it's okay to have that go on for as long as you're willing to accept that situation for what it is. And then hopefully that brings some clarity to the next step, which is probably that you'll realize that you are not getting your needs met and you're not heading in the direction that you want to head.
I love everything you said there. It reminds me of a video we recorded recently for my YouTube channel. I'll include a link to it in the episode details if anyone wants to check it out. It was a shorter video on what to do if a man isn't ready for a committed relationship or making you a priority. And something you said in that video was you want to watch what is going on here, watch what this man is doing 90+% of the time, and see if that's something that you yourself want to commit to. We can tend to get so focused on this finish line or this goal of getting the commitment we want from a man that we have strong feelings for. And we're kind of ignoring what he's doing or the fact that our needs aren't really getting met. So, what is this guy doing 90% of the time? And are you willing to commit yourself to this situation exactly as it is right now? Right.
Right.
So I'll include a link to that video in the description of this episode if you want to go check it out. Thank you so much for sending in your question. Hopefully this was helpful to everyone listening who's in this situation. I hear from women pretty much every day who are in very similar situations to this one. By the way, if you'd like to get your personal questions answered by my top coaches in a private online forum, I'll include a link to that too in the description of this episode. That's on sale for a $1 trial right now. And also, I'll be going live on Bullhorn every other Tuesday through the end of this year at 6:00 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be broadcasting my podcast live over there, and you can type your questions into the live chat if you're able to catch an episode live or actually call in to talk to me personally. That's totally free. I'll include a link to download the Bullhorn app as well. So everything is just in the description or the episode details right underneath where you're listening to this. Thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed hearing your perspective on this one.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So thanks for listening, everyone, and we will hopefully talk to you again very soon. If you're tired of struggling in your love life and you want a proven system to get into and maintain a relationship where you're consistently loved, valued, and cherished, go to forever1234.com. Again, that's forever1234.com.